Yeah.
Oh, and I should tell you for the quiz and exams, always use the full name and the abbreviation. I'll have both of them on there, so you can, if it's easier for you to remember the abbreviations or the whole words.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the whole words is easier because it kind of tells you what it does, rather than just memorizing a series of letters. All right, let's take our quiz then. All right, so what type of gland secretes hormones into the fluid and into the blood? That is endocrine. Where do exocrine glands, where do they secrete to? Like into the ducts and outside the body, basically. What are the two chemical classes? Exocrine and endocrine, protein and lipid, lipid soluble and water soluble. That's right, lipid and water. Which of these is not a releasing hormone produced by the hypothalamus? Growth hormone releasing, thyrotropin releasing, no, gonadotropin releasing, or luteinizing releasing? It's the last one. There's no such hormone as luteinizing releasing hormone. I made it up. What is it called when two hormones acting together cause a greater response? It's a synergistic. And what hormone produced by the pituitary causes milk production? It's prolactin. Lactation, lactose, you know that prefix. All right, so let's do some basics first. Maybe I should ask you, what do you know about hormones?
How they work in the male and female body.
You did learn about the male and female body, definitely. What is a hormone exactly? You're like defining it.
Molecule released in one part of the body that regulates activity of a cell in another part of the body.
That's a good definition. So, did y'all hear that? You want to say it louder? You can do it.
Molecules released in one part of the body but regulates activity of cells in other parts of the body.
Okay, and how do they get around?
Blood.
Right, so just travel through the blood. All right, so in order for those cells to respond to the hormones, like the correct ones, they have to have the right receptor. So in biology, everything's all about shape, as you probably saw with enzymes back in 201. And the receptors can be out on the cell membrane and bind to the hormone there, or they can be in the organelles, in the cytoplasm, or even in the nucleus itself. Because as you'll see in a minute, there's some hormones that just go straight through the cell membrane and look for their receptor inside every day. Every day they knock something into that hole. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And it is very specific. So one hormone has one receptor that complements it, as the shape that it fits into. I don't know why I have these animations. Makes me mad. All right, so the two classes, they travel differently through the blood. Water soluble, they just go into the blood's full of water, travel through. Uncomplicated, pretty simple. But things like your steroids, so estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, they can't just go in the blood because they're like oil. Put them in the blood and they wouldn't go anywhere. So instead they have to have special transport proteins that they bind to. And the transport proteins, like water, and it'll take the hormones around. All right, so how do the water-soluble ones work? If they're water-soluble, is it easier for them to go through a cell membrane or not? Because remember, if you're lipid-soluble, you can go through a membrane. If you're water-soluble, you're polar or you're charged or something. So if they're going to activate a cell, they have to bind to a receptor on the surface. like this purple receptor. So here's the hormone coming through, binds the receptor, and then the receptor is going to activate things inside the cell. And those molecules that the receptor activates are usually called second messengers. So like, the hormone's the first messenger, turns on the receptor, and then the receptor turns on some other protein inside, and second messenger. What does it tell the cell to do? Activate transcription, or make more of a protein, or turn on or turn off enzymes. So since we just did a reproductive system, what did LH do in the male, for example? Where is LH made? So made in the pituitary, goes down to the testes, and what is it? Oh, and it tells the cells down there to transcribe more testosterone, or turn on enzymes that make testosterone in that cell. All right, what about the lipid-soluble ones? That's the one in this blue triangle. It came in the blood with a carrier protein, and it can go straight through the membrane all the way into the nucleus. So its receptor is kind of floating around in the nucleus there. Let's go to the nucleus, bind the receptor. Same response though. Make more or less of a certain protein, or turn enzymes on or off based on how you need to fix the problem. All right. All right, so everybody changed to E, which is the right answer. So for A, every cell of the body has a receptor for every hormone. That would be a disaster. Because, like, for example, luteinizing hormone, it's supposed to tell the testes and the ovaries to do something. It's not supposed to tell your muscles or your liver or your ovary, yes, your uterus or anywhere else in the body to do anything. So only the places that respond have the receptor that matches it. And for D, they don't have the same shape because the hormone's like the key, the receptor's like the lock. So that'd be like you going to your door and trying to open your doorknob with another doorknob, which is kind of a fun image, like just banging your doorknob on there to another doorknob and trying, I don't know.
Oh, goodness.
So lock and a key. All right, how do cells respond to activation by hormone?
Job.
All right, so what do y'all think?
C and D.
Give me some more.
I guess
It's all of them.
maybe.
It is all of them.
You're still right.
So sometimes a cell needs to make more of something. Or, for example, what about those inhibiting hormones that you were just looking at? What do you think they tell the cell to do? Make less, turn off enzymes. So there's always, could be either way. Or maybe it's telling the cell to turn on some enzymes and turn off some enzymes. So basically it could be anything. Trick question. I said both of these things not too long ago. All right, so try question 1 on your own. You're not going to find any answers in your book. All right, so go ahead and check in with your group there, see what kind of pictures y'all got. All right. Any questions so far?
Question 2 is confusing.
Oh, yeah. Question 2.
Not cool.
All right. So the hypothalamus is the boss of the endocrine system. It's kind of, so the hypothalamus kind of starts everything. It kind of makes sense. It's way up there in the brain. Maybe you saw it when we dissected the sheep brain. It's like right in the middle. And hanging down off of it is the pituitary, and the hypothalamus. Its basic job is to tell the pituitary what to do. So I think of it as like the boss, and it's a very like standoffish boss that doesn't talk to his employees. He just has like this hated like assistant that goes around and does everything. That's the anterior pituitary. All right, so anterior pituitary, is that in the front or the back? Right? So this is the front, a little bit of the front. This is a little bit behind it. So it's the anterior, posterior. We're going to talk about the anterior first. And it's hanging down from the hypothalamus by the infundibulum. I hate that word, I can't say it. Infundibulum. I don't know. All right.
Oh my God, you know.
So we're going to talk more about these in a second, but there's like a special blood vessel connection between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary, which you'll see. Are you seeing similarities to a previous chapter? Is that the problem?
You're killing me. Stop. I feel like I'm in church. And I'm not supposed to laugh.
I don't see it. All right, here's your crazy table. So as we were looking at it, the hypothalamus, basically it senses what's going on in the blood or takes input from the brain to kind of decide what to do. And when it decides something needs to be done, it's going to make one of these releasing hormones or maybe some of these inhibiting hormones. They go to the pituitary and they tell the pituitary to make or not make these hormones. So for example, have you heard of like the women suddenly like lactating when they see like a crying baby, if they're already have a baby, not just randomly? That's because they see that stimulus of crying baby, brain receives it, tells the hypothalamus about it. Hypothalamus makes prolactin releasing hormone, which goes to the pituitary, which then makes prolactin. Starts to they go find a baby.
Go find your baby.
Or maybe, did we do this one already at some point? Maybe it's in patho. So your thyroid hormone warms you up, increases your metabolism. So if you get cold, hypothalamus can tell you're cold. It makes thyrotropin releasing hormone, which goes to the pituitary, and it tells the thyrotropes to make thyroid stimulating hormone, which is going to go to the thyroid. So for a lot of these, it's like a multiple step kind of process. Always starts with the hypothalamus. All right. And in order for those hypothalamic hormones, the releasing and the inhibiting hormones, to go to the pituitary, you need it to be rapid. You don't want to just put them in the blood and have them just circulate through the whole body. You've got the pituitary right there. So this is a special system, which is called the hypophyseal portal system, that takes the hypothalamic hormones straight to the pituitary. So you can get like a very rapid response that way. So it's a network of blood vessels. And we're going to look at a picture of it. So it's put into what's called the primary plexus, and that's arterioles, so like smaller arteries. And they go through capillaries, through the portal vein, to the anterior pituitary. You can see that right here. So you've got some arteries and capillaries up here in the hypothalamus. Release hormones right there into the blood, and it travels straight through the portal vein. And then in the pituitary, there's more capillaries because you want to spread out the hypothalamic hormones to the whole pituitary, and then it'll respond. So you've got the releasing and inhibiting hormones made up here, traveling down, then it tells the pituitary to make one of those hormones. Right. I think I have a question about that. All right, what about this one? You know, that was a lot to digest. We're starting with the hardest part of the chapter, I would say. All right, so go ahead and talk to your group. It's not E. Everybody vote again? Oh, I think most people changed. So D is the right answer. What's wrong with C? What are they released into? That's the hypothalamic hormones, or into the arterioles. It is capillaries. That's because capillaries give you more surface area, so you can get more hormones into the blood faster. All right. I think we'll come back to that in a little bit. I want to do that other question. All right. So we're going to do number 2 with your group. You're going to draw it on the table. Or maybe in pairs is better since we've got groups that way. So you're going to draw a simple diagram. And basically, I would do something like this. So you get the hypothalamus, and then you've got the portal vein, and then down here, you've got the interior. All right, so you're going to use that table as a guide and draw us a picture, kind of showing the relationship between all these. And this means activate. An arrow. This means inhibit. See what you can do with that. All right, so just start at the top of that table. Do you like this little star on the PRH? It says, thought to exist, but nature is uncertain. So they're like, we think it's there, but no one's ever found it or isolated it or anything. All right, so we do have to keep going. You'll have to finish drawing all those arrows at some point, although I think you pretty much got it. But now you can make a pretty one. So I'm going to talk about the hormones of the pituitary and what they actually do. So we've got prolactin, TSH, etc. And 4 of them are what are called tropic hormones. And they're basically their job is to go to another gland and tell it to make hormones. Like the one you already learned about, luteinizing hormone. Remember, it went and told ovary and testes to make testosterone, estrogen, etc. All right. So FSH, it's made by pituitary. You already learned about it. It helps with ovulation, development of the egg, and with sperm. LH, you know about that one. TSH, you haven't learned about that one yet. It goes to the thyroid gland, and it tells the thyroid gland to make thyroid hormone. Then you've got ACTH. It goes to the adrenal glands, and it tells them to make corticosteroids. And one of the main corticosteroids is cortisol. Have you heard of cortisol before? maybe. It's the stress hormone. It's a pretty good measure of how much stress you're under. And it's very easy to measure. You can measure it in saliva. So that's why they use it a lot for different studies. And then prolactin, milk synthesis, and it does some stuff in males. We don't really have to worry about that. And kind of interesting because are women making lots of milk before they have a baby? Right? So what stimulates that milk formation? Birth and like actually nursing, right? Because if you give birth and don't nurse at all, do you ever really make much milk?
How
You
can
could never.
some women start lactating before they even have a baby? Is it just some type of...
Yeah, and I think there could be a little bit, but it's certainly not like the amount that happens after you're already nursing.
Okay, because I just heard of people saying that.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty cool how it's like sensitive to how much is being like eaten by the baby. Like it'll change how much, or if triplets or something, the body just makes extra. It's kind of interesting. All right, what else? HGH. In like children and kids, it promotes bone growth. Like it helps. Remember how you had those growth plates, the ends of your long bones? They grow from there. It tells basically those cells there to divide faster, make more bones. The bones get longer. It also has a role in controlling blood sugar levels. And kind of a fun HGH fact. You know, it's been like abused a lot with like baseball, football. And in adults, some of your bones can keep growing if they get too much HGH. That's like the bones in your face and your head. So if you've seen pictures of like Barry Bonds, Sosa, McGuire, have you seen, does it look like their heads are enormous? Yeah. Compare it to them when they were like 25, they have like a normal size head. And they took all this HGH and all their bones in their head and face got bigger and bigger. And now they've got these like massive heads. And they're like, no, I wasn't abusing anything. And you're like, well, what happened to your head? You have another explanation for that. All right. We did 2 and 3. Let's see. All right. So with your group, take a look at that diagram you made. And I want to know how it's possible the pituitary can make a whole bunch of TSH at the same time that it's not making any prolactin. So we're going to need to be very specific for number 3. All right. So you can kind of see basically the hypothalamus, the reason it has all those different releasing and inhibiting hormones is so it can turn on specific hormones in the pituitary. It's not just, hey, pituitary, make all your hormones. It's much more specific. And yeah, kind of as I mentioned, we're doing the hardest thing in the chapter first. Most of these pathways are a lot simpler where it's like one gland, making one hormone, doing one thing. It's not these 7 hormones at once kind of business. All right. And one thing to mention, they basically all have negative feedback too, just like you saw with testosterone and estrogen. So the final hormone that's made, like maybe this is thyroid hormone, it goes back and it blocks the production of the releasing hormone in the hypothalamus, and it blocks the release of that hormone from the pituitary. And that's basically true of all of them. And this is a pretty cool diagram because you can look at all of them and see the feedback. So all these purple hormones, they go back and inhibit their specific green hormone. So like thyroid hormone inhibits TRH and it inhibits TSH. The glucocorticoids, which are like the cortisol, they're going to inhibit these 2.
So what would the positive feedback look
So there isn't a positive feedback loop involved in any of those.
So on our study guide, we should say it's not involved, because it asks.
Uh,
No, it says explain.
where does it say? Oh, just the difference between, where does it say that?
So the positive feedback loop has no effect.
So basically this, positive feedback is as if,
Yeah, going back to homeostasis.
no, it would make, this hormone would tell it to make more,
Like childbirth.
like childbirth, like that one from
Yeah.
201.
Make you contract better. Like you're not getting a positive stimulus or anything.
No, but it's just saying produce
making it
more.
work to then get.
Okay.
So just to know what that means,
So it just-
basically everything in this chapter is negative feedback.
Yeah.
It's like way, way more common. Because negative feedback brings you back to homeostasis, which is what you're always trying to do.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't see it in the book,
So posterior, it's a lot simpler. Hormones are made here, and these blue and green lines are actually axons, and the axon terminal is in the posterior pituitary. There's no blood vessels, it's not traveling through the blood, it's just going through an axon, and it's stored down here until it gets a signal to get released. So you'll get the signal up here, and then how do you send signals down an axon? Chapter 12. How does it get from, this would be like the dendritin, this is the axon terminal, how does the signal get there? Starts with an A. So an action potential, remember that word? So you start an action potential here, like, based on whatever the signals are from the hypothalamus, and it travels down here, and then those hormones are released from the terminals straight into the capillaries. And it's got a special name, just like everything. It's called the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. Remember a tract is a group of axons? Maybe you don't, it's been a while. All right. And so basically you could see them being produced, and then the green lines are the axons, and then down here in the posterior pituitary, there's a bunch of capillaries. So you just release them into the capillaries, and then it's going to go into the veins to the blood, to everywhere else. All right, what if you compare anterior and posterior? All right, so looks like you could use some group discussion on this one. This is a hard question. All right, so we got 2/3 E. E is not right. The answer is actually D, which I think only one person picked. Right, it's 2, yeah. So which other ones did you think, which other ones were you tempted by?
We got C and D.
It's a good one. So only the ones going to the anterior go through a vein. The posterior go through axons. It goes through little tracts. So the ones going to the anterior pituitary, they go into these veins here, or these capillaries, and through the, where's the label? Oh, yeah, the portal veins to here. But the posterior, it just travels straight through these axons to the posterior. All right. And it's extra mean because it's almost always more than one of the above. Right? It's always that, but not this time. All right. You already know about ADH. You're probably sick of it by now. Oxytocin. You've heard of that hormone before, maybe? Right? It's like the bonding hormone. Probably the biggest release is during and after labor. or anytime you're very happy, you're getting like an oxytocin release. And there's a lot of people, some kind of evolutionary people would say like oxytocin is like the bonding hormone. And even, that's the main reason you make it. It's like you make oxytocin, and whoever you're around, when you produce it, you're extra bonded to that person. That's one of the ones released like during an orgasm, for example. So that's like the idea of like why animals have that. So you're bonded to that person. That hormone kind of helps that. Because, other animals make it too, not just us. All right. And time's up. Okay, so we'll just review ADH a little bit next time. But otherwise, that was almost everything except the very last